The big reason I took so long to play Monkey 2 on stream was I was afraid of comments from people. Why are you speedrunning a point-and-click adventure game? That's silly. This is not a real speed game.
Come on, dude.
Could not be further from the truth.
The rabbit hole goes very, very deep. There is so much going on in the run.
Oh my goodness, I cannot believe it.
There's always something new to learn. It's incredibly rewarding.
And it's just a wonderful thing, and yeah, I love it.
That is how you play the game fast.
At first glance, 1991's Monkey Island 2 isn't a great candidate for a speed game. But today, I want to take you on a journey through the twists and turns, the setbacks and successes, the trials and the triumphs of an extraordinary community of speedrunners. This is the history of Monkey Island 2 speedrunning.
You play as Guybrush Threepwood, Mighty Pirate, after his exploits in Monkey Island 1, where he defeats the ghost pirate LeChuck.
He's now kind of a famous pirate, but not that famous. But that story is not really doing much for him anymore.
Don't you have any new stories?
So he decided to go on a treasure hunt.
Then Guybrush kind of goes on this quest between, I think, 4 different islands to go find this, like, mystic treasure.
He's on the search for the legendary treasure of Big Whoop.
Big Whoop?
Great name.
No one really cares. He just does it.
He goes after the treasure, and that's what the game's about.
So you start on Scab Island, and the first thing you have to do is deal with Largo, who's preventing you from leaving the island.
You screw up royally and manage to hand over LeChuck's beard to an evil person like Her the Grand, who then resurrects LeChuck.
Guybrush Threepwood is finished!
So in the meantime, you've now got LeChuck trying to get after you at the same time as you're trying to get this treasure.
And after you do that, you get to kind of explore the Tri-Island area, I think they call it, and you're on the hunt for the 4 pieces to the map of Big Whoop.
The pirates who had the map to the treasure of Big Whoop have torn up the map into 4 pieces, and all those pieces have been separated. You have to gather together those 4 pieces in order to head to the location and find Big Whoop.
So you solve a number of lock and key puzzles, navigate through dialogue trees, and you pirate your way through a bunch of challenges.
The game opens up massively. You've got 3 different islands you can visit. You can go back to Scab, you've got Booty Island, you've got Fat Island. So there's so many more places you can go and so many more people you can talk to. And when I was younger, I don't remember for sure, but I swear I must have taken a couple of weeks.
At the very end, even though LeChuck is trying to stop him, because LeChuck is back to life, he is able to reach the final island, and this is where the ending took place, which is a weird ending.
The treasure's not exactly what he expects it to be, which is why it's so good.
It seems like you end up in a theme park, and it seems like LeChuck is actually your brother, and you were just playing pretend, like there were no pirates, no nothing. It's a bit vague.
Now, look, there's a lot of stuff that happens in this game, and if I told you everything about the puzzles right now, you'd probably get lost. For now, just understand you solve puzzles, get the 4 map pieces, go to Dinky Island where the treasure is, and then defeat LeChuck. Later, when we start filling in the details and you hear weird stuff like push the garbage cans, run away from a chef, pick up a fish, and then give the fish to a fisherman so you can get his fishing pole. Just go with it. The first world record I could find was posted to Speed Demo's archive by Phalos Vogel. They were playing the original DOS version in, I'm assuming, ScumVM, a program that lets you play classic adventure games on modern PCs. Phalos Vogel completed their run in 46 minutes and 57 seconds, according to modern timing rules. In 2010, Monkey Island 2 Special Edition was released. This video isn't about that game, as it's an entirely different animal. The runs we're looking at are in the any % category, which complete the game on the harder difficulty with any of the game's original release platforms. I say harder difficulty, but really it's the default difficulty. There's a light mode that gets rid of as many of the puzzles as possible, and that's not what we're covering today. The first speedrun of Monkey Island 2 on Speedrun.com was by Deln in late 2015. He completed the game in 43 minutes and 14 seconds. To give one example of how Deln improved over Fellows Vogel, let's take a look at this moment when Guybrush has to rattle the cans to distract the chef. Fellows Vogel, like most casual players, walks around the entire mansion afterwards to get away from the chef. But Deln figured out that you can just pop right back into the back of the mansion. Even though logically the chef should catch you, the game only cares that you've cycled the screen. A few days later, speedrunner Weasel would submit another run. Already there were route improvements. For instance, here's Deln's run. He puts on the dress for Elaine Marley's party and walks to the mansion. This is the location of one of the map pieces. Walking all the way over there takes a long time. But Weasel figured out that you can leave the screen immediately, then use the map to re-enter, which puts him right next to the mansion. The run was full of these little adjustments.
It is so many little things. They just add up.
For example, a lot of the items can be used without having to pick them up.
Like say when you're in the jail cell, when you lift the bed, instead of picking up the stick and they're using it with the bone.
They don't call me the Bone Master for nothing.
You pick up the bed, use stick with bone, then he just picks it up automatically and goes straight to using it and stuff like that. Just little tiny things like that. There's so many of those, but back then it was just a case of getting better at every little thing you could.
Weasel would end the run at 41 minutes, a 2-minute improvement. And that would be it for a few years until someone else came along. Someone who just might be the most influential Monkey Island 2 runner of them all. A Way of Life, also known as Steve.
I must have played it like 20, 30 times when I was younger. I was streaming Monkey 2 runs before I even got on the leaderboard. Before there even was a leaderboard, like back in 2014, I think it was. I did do some Monkey 2 speedrun streams.
Since he was essentially on his own, there were many basic strategies that A Way of Life was unaware of, like being able to skip text with the period key.
I didn't even know text skipping was a thing. I didn't even know that worked, so I took probably 5 more or 6, 7 more minutes than you actually are supposed to, because I didn't know you could skip text. I just turned it up to the highest setting. I was like, oh, that'll do, that's fine. And then, like, 2017, I picked it up again, and I was like, I really want to speedrun this, and I really want to, like, do the best I can. I didn't know about speedrun.com at the time. I checked Speed Demo's archive. They didn't have a listing. I thought, right, I'm just going to do this myself. Then I found speedrun.com later, and I found the world record times, and I was like, right, this is what I've got to aim for. So I didn't actually watch the runs. I felt like I want to do my own pathing. I want to figure it out for myself. It was more fun that way. I was getting like 40, 45, 44 times, and I was like, oh, that's reasonable, that's okay. The record was 41 minutes, and I knew what I had to aim for, so in order to make sure I got down a bit quicker than that, I did end up watching the video. That's when I discovered, oh, you can use a button to skip the text. Oh, crap, okay. So that cut a couple of minutes off immediately, and the strats that I was using, the routing that I was using, was actually exactly what it should be, which I was really proud of. Like, oh, great, I figured it out for myself. Excellent, wonderful.
Steve picked up a few other small strats and got to grinding. And eventually, on February 11th, 2017, he was on pace for world record going into the endgame. Which makes this a perfect time to talk about the endgame and all of its RNG glory.
So that whole sequence is, I think, one of the more difficult parts of the run.
Because at that point, the run, it depends on a good LeChuck. You could be on world record pace, but if you don't get a good LeChuck, it's out the window.
In the game's final confrontation, Guybrush faces off against the resurrected pirate LeChuck. In this area, there are 5 corridor rooms, 1 elevator, and 3 interior rooms. The objective is to gather items in these rooms, put them all together into a juju bag, and assemble them into a voodoo doll of LeChuck. You then find LeChuck and use the voodoo doll to subdue him. The problem is that LeChuck can show up randomly and warp you to a different room.
He can warp you everywhere. If he shows up or not, it's dependent on RNG.
You never know when LeChuck's gonna show up.
But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. There are times you want LeChuck to appear.
Hope he doesn't show up when you don't want him to. Hope he does show up when you do want him to. And it's just both of those. Everything. Oh, it's just an absolute nightmare, the fight.
The way the RNG works is actually a little complicated. When LeChuck warps you, the game rolls a 9-sided die to see where you go. That's an equal chance for each of the 9 screens. The roll repeats until you land on a room that you're allowed to warp to. LeChuck can warp you to any of the corridor rooms. He can warp you to any of the other rooms as long as you've already been there, and you can't be warped to the room you're currently in. Immediately after a warp, the game flips a coin to see if you get a fast spawning LeChuck or a slow spawning LeChuck. The fast LeChuck has a 1 in 5 chance of showing up every 5 seconds. The slow LeChuck has a 1 in 11 chance every 8 seconds. If you get 2 slow LeChucks in a row, then the game changes the odds. Instead of a coin flip, there's now a 2 out of 3 chance of a fast LeChuck and a 1 out of 3 for the slow one. If you get 2 fast LeChucks in a row, then the game forces a slow LeChuck. Man, all of this sounds unnecessarily complicated.
That all seems way too sophisticated for what we actually probably did. I'm Ron Gilbert, and I was the creator of Monkey Island. I am curious now. I do have the source code to Monkey Island 2, and now I want to go through and actually see what we did for that randomness. But I mean, generally, we took the easy way out, right? We didn't typically do complicated solutions to problems.
If you have the time later, I'd love to to hear your take. If you have time to go into the code later.
Yeah, I'll do that. I'm curious now.
And, true to his word, Ron provided the relevant code in this blog post. Now, the explanation I gave earlier was discovered by LeoLitz, who used a modified version of ScumVM to watch the RNG output. I asked LeoLitz to take a look at Ron's code and explain what, if anything, was different. Here's what he wrote to me. It's basically what we kind of figured out. Initially, LeChuck is set to fast, then a random number is chosen. The range depends on how many encounters have happened. The result can make LeChuck slow and reset the encounter counter, so in practice it behaves exactly like what we thought. To be fair, the way I described it to Ron, using seconds instead of jiffies, or 1/60th of a second, it probably made it sound more complicated than it needed to be. So, after the first mandatory warp, you're hoping to appear outside of the first aid room or the box room.
You enter whichever room you got, and you pick some items, because we need to pick some items to make voodoo doll for LeChuck.
If he walks you straight to the room you need to be at, which is outside the medical room, great, that's a good start. You get in there, and then hope he shows up again to warp you out from there, where you need to go outside the box room.
After you have gone through the nursery and the box room, you go to the helium room. Here you need to fill some gloves and some balloons with helium, which we will need later. We need to use a coin return to make a coin fall down, which will distract LeChuck, because now we need to wait for LeChuck to appear.
Hey, a Susan B. Anthony!
He gets distracted by the coin, you steal his underwear.
Runners use this opportunity to squeeze in an additional required action.
You have to yoink up LeChuck's underwear. What we do in the speedrun is give him the hanky really quick, but if you miss that kind of pretty tight window, you're really out a lot of time, because then you have to run around and hunt down LeChuck again.
And now we have almost everything we need. We have to take a warp. Here we want to go to the room in front of the lift. You open the lift, you wait for LeChuck, and here things changes a little bit.
If you have the balloon and the gloves, and you're in the elevator, the spawning rule changes. About every 1.5 seconds, LeChuck has a 50-50 chance of showing up. But this is good for us because we need LeChuck to show up so we can steal his beard.
So as soon as he shows up, you use the lift, the door will close and will drop his beard. So you can take the beard, put it in the bag. Now you have everything to make the doll.
Once you have the doll assembled, it's game over for LeChuck. But, as we've seen, the path to get there is littered with RNG landmines.
And there's, angrier LeChucks than others, I think, where there's times where no matter what room you go into, he just shows up and ruins your day. And then there's times where he's like very relaxed. We call him LeChill. And you never see him. You only see him when you need to see him, and then that's great.
It's like, it's not a PB until LeChuck decides it is so.
At the start of his LeChuck sequence at the end of his run on February 11th, A Way of Life got a perfect warp right outside the medical room. The rest of the LeChuck sequence went reasonably well, and he earned a new world record of 40 minutes and 35 seconds.
I just kept grinding it, and it didn't take long before I got the 40:35, and that was my first world record, and I felt really accomplished. It was like, I'd managed to do exactly what I set out to do. Let's take it further.
And to take it further, Steve would need to contend with the rest of the game's RNG, starting with Wally.
You need to steal a monocle from Wally, and the amount of time it takes for him to drop the monocle is random.
So we'd walk in, you get the piece of paper, then you stand there waiting to pick up the monocle. So then you drop it and you go. There were some optimizations though later on with that.
You enter his room, and as soon as Guybrush stops, Wally greets you, and that's basically the start of the timer.
Hello.
So the goal is to stop as soon as possible.
So, instead of continuing to walk once you come onto this screen, it's advantageous to stop for a moment.
I then discovered much later where you can stop yourself when you walk in, because when Wally says hello is based on when you walk in the room and stop, and then he says hello, but you can manipulate that because he has autopathing and he stops, but you can actually select that part of the screen when he switches to that seat, stop the Guybrush, so he'd be here, you could stop him here, and Wally would say hello much quicker and then carry on as you go.
But basically you can stop him closer to the door. So that's how Steve did it, and his setup was crazy because he found like 3 different pixels that it could use depending on how the camera was scrolling before entering Wally's room.
It was difficult because when you start the game, the screen scrolls along and the screen's in a certain position, but it would be different almost every time you did it. It wouldn't always scroll to the exact same place. It would sometimes be a few pixels to the left, sometimes be a few pixels to the right. So it's really difficult to know exactly where to drop the cursor and get that exact movement.
Later on, we have the spitting contest, where you have to wait for the wind to blow.
He's cleared first place!
And again, that's like Wally. That's completely RNG how much time you need to wait.
The wind could either be exactly when you need it to, when you're ready to spit, or you could have to wait several seconds for it. It's completely randomized. Sometimes we've had runs where the wind has been just about when you're ready to take the spit, so you quickly hurry up and spit. It's too late. The wind's already gone. You've lost your chance. You've thrown away that opportunity.
It's a great day for spitting.
The bone puzzle RNG was always a big factor. You'd go left to the bone puzzle, and what you would want, ideally, because you have to go through these doors, but which one you go through is based on the order which was written on the spit paper when Guybrush has the dream.
The arm bone's connected to the head bone.
I gotta write this down.
This is something that stumped a lot of casual players as well, because they like read the piece of paper and they'd look at the bone puzzle and they'd be like, I don't get it.
What you're supposed to do is match the first word of each line to the corresponding picture. For instance, if we had this solution, the first one you're looking for should be arm, head, rib. Then the second should be leg, hip, arm, and so on. But speedrunners take a shortcut so they don't have to remember all of it.
But you just have to look at the first line. So you've got the piece of paper. The first line, the order, like hip, leg, arm, for example. That's what you need to look at. So you'd go into the room. Oh, you see a puzzle that starts with a hip. Right, hopefully it's that door. Open it, go through. If you came back out, you'd failed. start again, you've probably thrown the run away. If you were right, you end up at the next part of the puzzle. Okay, this is arm. You see an arm. Hopefully it's right behind your character so you could just go straight through. And that was the best RNG if you didn't have to walk. Sometimes, especially on the first part of the puzzle, you had to walk to the next room, which would waste even more time. It's so different each time you play, and it's really, really difficult to get good RNG there, but it is completely random. You just do what you can.
So that's the RNG, but that's not the only challenging part of the run.
The dialogues are deceptively difficult.
There's a lot of frame-tight inputs that are going on between skipping the text, skipping cutscenes, which sometimes whole chunks of dialogue are coded as a cutscene, so you want to skip those as soon as possible.
You would never notice if you're watching it casually, but like if you're playing it or you know the speedrun, you know it's like, oh yeah, we just saved like 10 seconds right there because we just skipped like a whole chunk of dialogue there.
Single lines of dialogue can be skipped by pressing or holding period. And if you press escape, you can skip entire sections if those sections are treated as cutscenes. However, you can't just hold period and escape at the same time. That doesn't work.
You know, you have to like hit your dialogue, let go of period to skip the dialogue, hit your dialogue selection, hold period again as fast as possible so you're not losing time to skipping, and like not over skipping so you can skip the cutscene as fast as possible. Because if you skip the text, you like miss a window to skip the cutscene. It's very like noodly.
There are a lot of adventure games where you can just spam click, or you can just hold down a button and that's all that you have to do. But
Right.
in this game, that doesn't seem to be the case.
It's not.
But overall, when I asked the runners about the most challenging part of the run, they all had a similar answer.
There's not like a big, like one super impossible trick that to do. So it kind of makes the whole thing difficult because you kind of need to be on point the whole time.
I think the biggest surprise in the speedrun is just how much the millions of tiny little strategies and tactics and tricks, how much they add up to.
It's not like your good times are gate held by some sort of frame perfect twerking up the stairs, clipping, flipping, zipping through the walls, you know.
When I was learning it, I was learning from Leo's guide, and I was thinking, well, I don't need to know everything here. I'm not going for a world record. I can just do the same route that he does, and that'll be fine. And I came in 20 minutes slower. It was absurd.
So, with that in mind, let's get back to Steve, who had just achieved his first world record.
So I just kept running. I had no competition, but I just kept running it. I knew I could go quicker.
Steve's next world record illustrated several movement optimizations, something that would become a long-standing trend.
For some reason, the Scam engine has a terrible pathing algorithm. So it's almost always better to not just click on your destination, but like click on a pixel in the middle between you and your destination. And then as soon as Guybrush reaches that one, you click the next one, and so on. Like in chapter 1, you need to go to the cemetery and walk to the graves in the background. And we found like at least like 5 or 6 ways to do it.
To give an example, here's A Way of Life in 2017 compared to Delm.
So almost always there's a better way to walk where you need to walk.
He just meanders. Sometimes you can click on directly on where you want to go, and instead of just going in a line, he'll go like scoop down and around, and it's like, why is that ever an option?
I call it holding Guybrush's hand. I'm like, come on, Guybrush, we're going this way. Let's go. Kind of have to fight against the autopathing sometimes.
Particularly on like bigger, like the overhead maps and stuff like that. Like you want Guybrush to always take the most direct route. And he doesn't always do that without you kind of like holding his hand a little bit to make sure he gets going the right way.
And even a lot of rooms, there's little bits of you get Guybrush to walk around the table, in front of the table, to go faster.
That is the first run of the night I'm actually happy with.
After his 3851 on February 24th, Steve took a step back and analyzed the game more in depth. He produced a series of YouTube videos based on his findings. For example, there's a puzzle early on where you have to catch a rat named Chester.
Chester, which is not the official name, but everyone calls the rat Chester, he also is RNG.
His name is Monster. But We call him Chester. At least I started calling him Chester, mainly because of the association with Chester Cheetah, the Cheetos mascot. And I was like, okay, that's fun.
The puzzle is to build a trap on this screen so you can catch the rat.
We used to set up the trap and everything on the way back, coming near to the end of Scab Island. So you've got the string, you've got the stick, and you've got the cheese, and you put it all together, and then you've just got to wait for Chester, his RNG, make sure he goes into the box, boom, catch him, done.
Originally, Steve would build the trap and then trap Chester all in one go. But this left time for the rat to run all over the place.
He can run in front of you while you're setting up the trap to trap him. And that way he gets scared because you're there, and it's a mess because he runs around everywhere.
Chester, no! Chester, please, what are you doing?
Yeah, anytime that guy brushes close to the rat freaks out and it can kind of go any which way, which is annoying because you kind of have to corral it back into the box again.
Steve's new strat broke up the puzzle into multiple trips. This was slower on the face of it, but it meant that Chester had less time to run away, and thus it was easier to catch him.
And you just set up one thing. You have just enough time to get to grab the string, and Chester will move. And if he moves perfectly right, at the right timing, he gets right in the box. Done, catch him. Much better than sitting back and waiting for the RNG to take hold.
Steve would also do the math on the coffins.
So at some point, we need to open a coffin to find Rapscallion, which is one of the pirates that had one piece of the map. And which coffin he is in is RNG. We need to find a book.
You have to steal this book on Fat Island, which gives you 5 quotations from 5 pirates. You then need to match the quote by Rapscallion to the quote on the coffin to know which one he's in.
Kiss me, I've got scurvy.
What casual players may not know is that the order of the quotations in the book is the same order as the coffins appear in. So, if Rapscallion's quote is listed first, he's in the first coffin. If it's the second quote, he's in the second coffin, and so on. Runners can read the book while walking, which means they don't have to look at each coffin in the crypt. And yes, grabbing the book is necessary.
You need to read the book. Like, people might think, okay, maybe you can skip the book and try to open every coffin, but it doesn't work.
Runners have to visit Rapscallion's coffin 3 times during the run. Steve found that, because of all those trips, there was a 15-second difference between coffin 1 and coffin 5.
It doesn't seem like it might be much. Like, it's just one small room. But you need to visit it so many times that it compounds.
One of the nicest feelings that you get during a run is when you find out which coffin you've got. Especially if it's a coffin 1 or a coffin 2, you feel like you've just received a gift and you can breathe.
You could be having a great run, get a bad coffin, and you just say like, no, I'm not letting this run stop me. And then suddenly you go into overdrive and you have the best run you've ever had, like in spite of the coffin. And then there's other times where like it kind of just defeats you and you kind of like, yeah, the coffin beat me today.
So, after all that examination, Steve went back to work, and on March 22nd, 2017, he earned this run.
LeChuck, please. Thank you. Best luck so far. Oh, okay. Right, I want him to show up again right away now. No, he's not going to, is he? That's like 10 seconds lost. Yes! 37, 47. I'm in heaven. What a run.
Steve then took time off to run other games. Thimbleweed Park, which had just come out, Secret of Monkey Island, Curse of Monkey Island to get the world record sweep in the first 3 Monkey Island games. And then, in the fall of 2017, Steve would learn something that would turn the run upside down. In a world record progression history livestream that he would do later, Steve claimed that runner Osmosis Jones was the one who told him about this crucial information. But Osmosis Jones, who was in chat at the time, doesn't remember this. I'd also like to mention that Steve's world record progression was immensely helpful in my research, and you'll be seeing a bit more of it later. In any case, what Steve learned was that the Amiga version of the game ran faster in ScumVM. For instance, the animation speed of the coffin ride to the Voodoo Shack was much faster in the Amiga version.
Motorboat coffin.
Usually, rowing from the shore takes 23 seconds on the DOS version. Amiga takes 12. Going back the other way takes 19 seconds on DOS, but only 11 on Amiga. And you have to ride the coffin 7 times in the run.
It was so much quicker. It was not even funny. It was like, right, all the trips you take through the swamp, this is going to save so much time on the coffin. And it was like a minute overall, I think, between the Amiga and the DOS version. So I was like, that's it, we're using this version.
You can also skip this opening screen immediately in the Amiga version. You don't have to wait as long after the drinking contest. There were some cutscenes that took a little longer, but those were negligible. The biggest downside to using the Amiga version is the lack of music. Okay, I mean, it does have a soundtrack, it's just relatively sparse compared to the DOS version. That has nothing to do with the speed of the run, but the music in this game is great, and it's kind of sad to lose it. But overall, the Amiga version saved about 1 minute and 30 seconds. This development would be enough to bring a way of life back to the game.
November rolled around. And once I was done with running Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, or Indy 4 as it's otherwise known, it was time to return to Monkey Island, which would be a good name for a sequel game, if it ever happened. It won't, sadly, but never mind.
Steve's next world record, using the Amiga version, also had better island pathing. Just clicking on the destination, Guybrush moves at right angles. But by holding his hand, so to speak, he can move in a more direct line. During the endgame, Steve also started mixing the Juju Bag ingredients while in the middle of walking.
The top runners all do this wonderful trick where they send Guybrush to a door, and while he's walking to the door, they're fiddling around in the inventory trying to construct the voodoo doll, trying to get all the ingredients of the voodoo doll in the bag.
You can see Steve do that in the first aid room, for instance. And here, after pulling LeChuck's underwear. Before giving LeChuck the hanky, he grabs the undies and shoves them in the bag along the way, making an already tight window even tighter.
I spent quite a while practicing this, trying to get this down, and I just couldn't. It was really, really tricky. Because it's random where LeChuck sends you, you have to be able to adapt to where the items are and which items you've got as well, and how much time you've got to walk to different doors. That is a really intense sequence to have right at the end of the run, especially if you're on really good pace. You don't want to mess anything up.
37:15. That was quicker than I thought. I thought I was just going to slightly take some time off, but nope. New world record.
A Way of Life's 37:15 was truly impressive, but by this point, Steve was no longer alone in his world record pursuits.
Yeah, I would describe Steve as someone who was driven, hardworking, and also very supportive. Steve was there, I think, on my first Monkey Island 2 speedrun stream ever.
I found his YouTube video first of one of his streams that he did, and his first attempt at a run. I found he had a Twitch page, so I followed, I believe, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to catch this guy live. And then I did, not too long after, he started streaming again.
You know, he was there almost every time I was streaming.
We chatted, and it was great to have someone to talk to about the game.
And it was Steve's guide was the impetus for me to even pick up Monkey Island 2 speedrunning in the first place. I was interested in speedrunning at the time, but I hadn't quite found my speed game yet. I like to say that Steve taught me how to speedrun Monkey Island 2.
Frozen Spade would give Steve some much-needed competition.
The best way that speedruns develop is by having competition. When you just have an extra set of eyes and an extra brain in there to think of stuff you can't think of, just to push you along as well, is really advantageous. So it was great for the game and it was great for the speedrun. And then we'd come back and forth and think of strats and then try and outdo each other.
For instance, Spade found the exact pixel to stand on to wait for Wally to drop his monocle.
Pretty much any time Guybrush picks up an item, he stands in the same spot every time. So because you're waiting for Wally to drop the monocle, if you just line your cursor up and get Guybrush in the exact spot, he'll just be right there and can grab the monocle, and then you're out.
Oh, come on, Wally. You can do it. You can do it.
Cursor buffering is something that comes to mind. Spade came up with that. It's like putting the cursor on the screen for when he switches screen to another scene and he wants to know exactly where he's going. So he put the cursor, like, say, when he's exiting the mansion on Fat Island, he put the cursor over the cactus so he knew exactly where to click when he exits.
Frozen Spade was also just incredibly fast. If you compare Spade putting together the Rat Trap with Steve's last world record, there's about a 3-second difference.
Spade is a genuine American ninja.
And the result of all these optimizations and practice?
Come on. Yes! Ah! We did it! Take that, Steve!
A 37-14 world record by 1 second.
At the end of Rocky 3, when Rocky Balboa and Apollo Creed are talking to each other, and they're going on about the fight they had in Rocky 2, and how they beat each other to a count out, and Rocky got up first, and Apollo missed the count by 1 second, and he was like, Balboa, you beat me by 1 second. 1 second! That's a very tough thing for a man of my intelligence to take, or something like that. And it was hard for me as well. He beat me by 1 second. And I hadn't had any rivalry in any other world record at this point, so it did hurt. As much as I said it was good for the community to push the game along, he's finally caught me up. I now have a proper rival, and it's time to get down to business.
It wouldn't take long for Steve to strike back.
36-37. Get wrecked, Spade. Or not. 36-06. Somebody give me a microphone to drop.
He would continue to find little time saves, like exiting the mansion slightly differently. On December 4th, 2017, A Way of Life would be on a run that didn't look promising. The numbers had been red for most of it, and he was only about 3 seconds ahead going into LeChuck.
Nice start. Open the drawer. LeChuck's turned up, but don't worry about it. This can be beneficial, actually. It is perfect! Right, he's warped us where we wanted to go. This is very generous, LeChuck. This is very rare. Okay, we've got one final warp. If he sends us to the elevator, that is a new world record. Oh, you LeChuck. Wow. Oh, but he made up for it! Oh my god! LeChuck! Champion of the world! 35-21. LeChuck saved the run, as well as trying to kill it at the same time.
After Steve's 35-21, he would let the game rest. During this time, Frozen Spade was trying to catch up, but there was a bit of an issue.
It wasn't all like sunshine and rainbows, of course, the back and forth. Like, there was a period of time where I was trying really hard to beat Steve, but I eventually realized it was impossible.
For reasons neither runner could understand, Frozen Spade's computer ran the game slower.
My best guess is that I was losing maybe 2+ minutes of time just because my game was running slower. Eventually, I had become so desperate, I bought myself a little USB drive. I loaded up ScumVM, Monkey Island 2, and Live Split. I decided I was going to keep this with me, and if I was maybe at a friend's house, I'd try to run the game on a different computer and see if somebody I knew had a computer that would run the game without this kind of timing issue. And indeed, I found myself at a friend's house. It's like, hey, can I, try this on your computer? Sure. Went to his house and recorded a few runs, 2 or 3, and of which I ended up back-to-back world records at my friend's house.
Yeah, yeah. That's it! Take that, Steve! Steve's not even here.
Spade's world records would prompt Steve to come back.
Wow, that was so close. 7 seconds off the world record.
And then, on April 6th, 2018, something monumental.
My 393rd run started on par with my PB, but it got better and better. I had greens and golds all over. I was going into LeChuck. I had a 17-second lead. And then this happened.
We're going to lose time, inevitably. Let's see. Less RNG, LeChuck, please. Great start. This is it, boys. Don't show up. Oh, you did show up. Oh, he put us back where we were. I thought he put us outside the box room again. But we'll take that. As long as that's the only bad warp. You. Oh, alright, we're going in the elevator. Bad exit. That's my new strat. Go in the elevator, activate that warp point. You son of a bitch, LeChuck! I'm having spade luck right now. I'm here now. Moving too quick. Come on, let's do it. Wow, you are a son of a bitch!
There it was. I got well and truly LeCucked. And my run was ruined. It's funny how you always want the best RNG luck, and it can happen. Very occasionally it can happen, but sometimes it goes the complete opposite way and you get the worst luck in the world, and I think that is the worst luck I've ever had in that fight. This is the reason we have the LeChuck Please emote, as Oz just demonstrated. It's an attempt to appease the RNG gods who control LeChuck and give us a run with decent RNG, please. But I had a 17-second advantage, and in the end I lost the run by 18 seconds. The time loss was phenomenal. It was a really big kick in the balls and a huge dent in my confidence. I felt like the game was working against me and I just couldn't get a decent run in.
Steve moved away from Monkey Island 2, running Day of the Tentacle and Fate of Atlantis. World record activity would become dormant until January 14th, 2019. Frozen Spade had returned. And with this return, a shift in the way runners approached the endgame. Save strats during the LeChuck fight. Now, I want to back up a little bit. In my video about The Secret of Monkey Island, the first game in the series, I explained how runners used quick saves and quick loads to manipulate the RNG. Runners aren't using original hardware. Instead, they use ScumVM. So when I explained that runners were using save states, some people had opinions. In retrospect, there is one thing I wish I would have pointed out, and it's my fault that I didn't. In the original games, you could save whenever you wanted to. You just had to go through a menu and it took maybe a second. I didn't mention this because as an old school adventure gamer, that was obvious to me.
If you were able to run the original game now, with modern hardware and stuff, the menus for saving and loading would be so quick. They would just pop up. It would be probably just one additional click compared to what we do. It wouldn't really be much different.
And in case you're wondering why they didn't just use the original save and load screens, ScumVM did not support that until very recently.
As the moderator of the board, it was up to me to decide, and based on community feedback, what to do when it came to that situation. There's no Bible that we have to follow. There's no book of Monkey Island speedrunning, and we must do this and we must do that. It's all community driven.
No one in the community itself was ever like, I don't like this. I don't like this at all, and like made a stink about it. Everyone's kind of like, yeah, that like having RNG at the end of this game stinks. And we're all using the same like interpreter to play it. Like, this is fine. Like, this is okay.
Everyone who plays Monkey Island 2 has kind of experienced that frustration with LeChuck.
In the end, after discussion, runners would use save and load strats at the LeChuck fight. Save before a warp, and if it's a bad one, reload. They don't use save and load strats in other places because the RNG is often set well before you get to see the result.
Everyone was on the same fence as me. It's like, let's do quick saving, let's do quick loading. Okay, fine. Anyone object? No? That's all good. So the community decides at the end of the day.
But one caveat. ScumVM handles RNG differently than original hardware. Reloading a save would not have changed the result. However, when runners agreed to use save load strats, this wasn't fully understood. In truth, speedrunning old adventure games on modern hardware is a series of compromises. It isn't perfect, and it never will be. What really matters is fair competition and community agreement.
No one who actually speedruns the game has a problem with it. It's only people who, want to protect their idea of what the game was a long time ago, which I respect, but it's that's why it doesn't bother me, because it's like everybody who I'm running against is fine with it.
And I will admit, save strats is a coward's way to play, but to be honest, maybe it's okay to be a coward sometimes.
Save strats didn't negate the RNG entirely. LeChuck could still repeatedly warp you where you don't want to go, which of course wastes time. And then something would happen that would change not only Monkey Island 2 speedrunning, but point-and-click speedrunning as a genre. Urquan, an accomplished speedrunner in his own right, had found a problem in ScumVM. Due to the way the timer interval was set up, games were running slower than they would have run natively in DOS. Because ScumVM is open source, Urquan was able to make his own version, and fixed the timing issues to be more accurate to how the games would have run back when they were released. This also fixed the hardware differences that Frozen Spade was seeing and created a level playing field.
There were some inconsistencies with the timing, so he sought out the way to get that sorted and to fix that. And then it just sped up the game.
The nice thing about QuanVM is it kind of leveled the playing field. Like for me, it was a big boost, but everybody got a little bit of a boost.
Urquan's ScumVM was useful for other speed games as well, like the first Monkey Island game, King's Quest V, King's Quest IV, Conquest of the Longbow, and many others. QuanVM, as some took to calling it, was more than enough to entice Steve back after a year away. The speed difference was slight, but over the course of a 35-minute run, it adds up to a lot.
So close to sub 34, my god! Why can't I get sub times? But that is a new world record.
Frozen Spade was quick to respond. And by quick, I mean before Steve's stream had even ended.
So I was watching Steve stream, and he ended up using the new stuff and got a world record. And it's like, dang it, I wanted to be the one to get the world record with the new tech. So I booted up my stream immediately.
The guy would not let it rest. It's like he was just so he'd do that quite a lot. I would do a stream, and because he lives in America and the time zone difference and everything, it would be quite late for me in the evening, but it would mid-afternoon for him. So he'd just jump on a stream straight after I would set a record, and he'd beat me, and he'd be like, damn it.
Just a few hours later, Spade would beat Steve by 17 seconds.
You ready on time? And time!
And I think he took it well. I don't think he took too much offense to that, but...
Spade, he's an enigma. He really is. he pushed my buttons so much, and he loved it.
Woo! Baby! 33-43. That's how you play the game fast.
What? Okay. It's on now.
Is how you play the game fast.
To have a rival like Spade, it means the world. Much better than if I was going at it on my own and trying to beat my own records. It's just a lot more satisfying to beat someone else. The Stratmaster Ninja, I would call him. When we were tussling for the world record, we're both equal. There's no new strats. But he's come up with something. He's come up with a tiny little time save because he is the Stratmaster Ninja. Boom, he beats me.
We kind of had some tongue-in-cheek bits. It's like, I don't want to pull a Steve here. Going back and forth ended up being hugely motivating.
Damn, he's good, unfortunately. He wasn't there for fun. He wasn't just doing it for funsies. He was very serious. He is very determined and he's very eager, and he likes world records, and yeah, he came after mine.
Oh, baby, 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 baby. Ooh, doggy, 3309. Wow.
Wally, you suck. Oh my god! Oh my god, that was amazing.
There were a lot of small optimizations during this period, but let's take a look at just one. Horn strats.
Horn strats was something I had discovered by watching a casual playthrough of Monkey Island 2 by Lumophile, another known speedrunner. And he was really struggling to figure out how to get the fish.
If you recall, the standard solution is to bang the trash cans.
Hey, what is all the racket?
Instead,
he blew the horn, and the chef came out of the kitchen. I never knew this was possible. Most people, you'd go and you'd bang on the trash can, and then you'd run around the mansion.
This gave runners the opportunity for another neat but risky time save.
We'd sit right next to the exit, blow the horn, and immediately leave. You had to do a little bit of tricky timing by skipping the chef's dialogue. It was, I think, the closest we'd ever get to like a frame perfect trick, like a very small frame window to like skip the maximum amount of the chef's animations. Because normally you'd kind of have to watch him chase you around the corner. But if you skipped at just the right time, you would skip that animation. And so you would pop in, blow the horn, pop out, pop back in. You don't actually have to run around, fun fact. And then you just could run into the kitchen, grab the fish, and be on your way. At best, it would save you a few seconds. But if you messed it up, you're losing much more time than you would be saving.
After the epic back and forth, Steve's 3308 on September 24th would be his last world record.
I wanted to do other things in life. I had the opportunity to do so, so I decided to take a change, to take a step, and stop speedrunning games. I got married, I moved from my parents' place, I found employment, and I'm happy to be here, and I do miss those times, and I just don't have the time to dedicate to that sort of thing, so unfortunately it's just something that currently in my life I am not able to do. My wife keeps telling me, like, you can speedrun, you can just take it just a bit more casually, but if I'm going to do it, I need to do it right. I need to go for records. I can't just play it. I'm just grateful for having the opportunity to do it and to having the opportunity to run against so many great people that I did.
And after Steve's 3308, Frozen Spade would break the 33-minute barrier a few weeks later with a 3252.
Ooh, there it is.
Frozen Spade's run was so good, it would still be the world record over a year later. But then, a new runner arrived, someone who treated the game like a scientist, programmer, and artist all in one. LeoLitz began running the game in 2019.
As soon as you learn it a little bit more, get accustomed with the speedrun, kind of everything becomes difficult, because this is a game about optimization.
Speaking of optimizations, here's one that developed during the time LeoLitz started speedrunning. It has to do with a strategy in the elevator during the LeChuck sequence.
You wait for him in the lift, and then you pick up the last item to make the voodoo doll, which is his beard.
You might think to pick up the beard immediately, but you actually want to send the elevator back down and wait until LeChuck returns.
You leave the beard on the floor until LeChuck shows up, because what'll happen is at that point you stick the beard in the juju bag, you finish the voodoo doll, and you stab him there. Because normally, if you have the voodoo doll constructed, LeChuck actually won't come to the elevator.
You don't pick up the beard as soon as you go up. Otherwise, he will never show up in the lift.
And so by doing that, they never figured out what to have LeChuck do when you stab the voodoo doll. So he kind of just does a couple weird movements and disappears for a second before you go on out and chase him into the next room.
This saves time because in the elevator, LeChuck shows up much quicker than if you were to walk back out into the corridor.
So usually it is faster to just wait for him in the lift. You just wait for at most 1 second.
LeoLitz kept running the game and getting his time down. And to show you just how far LeoLitz would go to get better at the game, he created a tool to practice the sunken ship coordinates.
So at some point you need to visit a sunken ship. You have some coordinates that you need to click on a map, and the coordinates are random. As soon as you know the coordinates, you know where to click. But obviously, you need to practice it. And this is a nice thing that I did for the speedrun because I made a website for it. Because when you try to practice it in the game, you always get the same coordinates because they are generated when you read the book, I think. So it would be a bit annoying to practice inside the game. So I made a tool, a website where you can easily practice it.
And to be fair, and I hope you take this as a compliment, I can't imagine anybody else in the speedrunning community making a website other than you to do that. I think that's great.
When I started doing runs, I got in kind of a competition with Trust, which was really nice, and that kept me going for a long time.
LeoLitz spent much of 2019 trading 3rd and 4th place with Frazwar.
Like I did a run, I thought, okay, I cannot really do better than this. And then he beats my run like 2 days later, and that motivates me to do another run. And at some point I felt kind of bad. I always beat him like 1 day later. When you have someone to compete with, you get more motivated and that gets you going.
Leo also found a more consistent visual cue for stopping in Wally's room. If you remember, the existing visual cues were difficult because of the inconsistent screen scrolling.
There is one thing that doesn't move with the camera, and that thing is like the inventory, the verbs. So I found 1 pixel on the word give, which is horizontally the perfect distance. And then as soon as I'm on that pixel, I just need to move up in order to then click on the screen. And that's the precise position.
And in December of 2020, Leo would commence his any % world record grind.
I was really playing well, and I basically had record or just lost it, but like I had it for a few days before in every category of Monkey 2, apart from any %, which is the main one. So I guess that's why I decided to grind that much, because I wanted to complete the sweep. Let's go, man. Oh man, it took so long, and yeah.
In addition to Leo's skill, he also had a new glitch on his side.
The big thing, the music glitch or the iMuse glitch, by turning off the music, it cuts short a bunch of these audio cues that the game would wait for before progressing. The big one is when you're in LeChuck's fortress, you're hanging above the acid pit and you do the spit puzzle, ricochet off, and you blow out the candle. Normally there's a music cue that plays there, and the next sequence doesn't happen until that cue's finished playing.
But with the music off, the transition happens instantly.
Great. Turn off the music, save. I think it was probably like around 17 seconds. Easy.
2020 would also be the year that runner The Woofs began his Monkey Island 2 speedrunning journey.
Monkey Island 2 is always one of my favorite games. I didn't think you could speedrun an adventure game. I was one of those people a long time ago, but I noticed that there was like a pretty active scene for such a small game and stuff, so I got really into it from there. So I started running Monkey Island 2 Special Edition, which is the first speedrun I ever did in July, like the end of July of 2020. But I ran that for like 2 or 3 months maybe. And then I was basically like, I need a break from it, but I was afraid to, I don't know, move away from Monkey Island at that point. I was like, I should probably keep doing this. So I started learning the light mode version of the speedrun. And then I got world record in that. And then I was like, well, now I have to go back to 90% now, because now I'm like not completely dialed in on it.
The end of 2020 turned out to be an active time for Monkey Island 2 speedruns.
Things were changing pretty regularly because I was running it. I think that's when Leo and when Spade started running it again. Steve came back for a while. And there was like 4, maybe 5 of us that were like actively running the game. And that's always a lot more fun when you have like a bunch of people doing the same thing.
The Woofs explained to me that there were a lot of minor route changes going on at this time.
In terms of like my own run, I think I contributed maybe two very small things that I'm very proud of, because at least it was something. But one was the current cemetery walk. I managed to figure out a way to kind of zigzag a really quick way up to the top. That doesn't seem super intuitive, but like, yeah, by zigzagging, you actually go faster than going the straight line up the middle. I don't know, it's one of these weird quirks of Monkey Island 2, I think.
Now, if you were paying attention, and I mean really paying attention, you might have noticed the wolf's movement here looks identical to what Deln was doing back in 2015. Let me know in the comments if you caught that. I asked the wolfs what made his approach faster, and here's what he told me. I am doing a specific path up to the graveyard that is faster than simply clicking the graves as Deln does. The path, despite being just as zigzaggy, is actually faster as these particular angles remove some of the slow movement of Guybrush heading further away into the background. You can see that Deln's Guybrush almost stops in place a few times as the game sort of has him heading over little bumps in the ground to create some depth and perspective. On mine, I directly shoot over to the right, then left, avoiding all of that.
So there was that, and then there's one diagonal I found on Scab Island as we kind of exit at the very end. We leave from the swamp to go down to Captain Dread. There's like one small diagonal that you take right out of the swamp.
This saves somewhere between 0.3 and 0.5 seconds. At some point, and exactly when is unclear, runners also noticed something weird about the overworld map on Fat Island.
Fat Island is weird in the overworld map in that you can hit any button that you want, and that counts as a left click. So what we do anytime we're moving around on Fat Island, like as we exit like the harbor or something, we're heading down to the mansion or something, we'll just, like for instance, just hold escape, and then that counts as a mouse click. So as soon as the overworld map shows up, Guybrush just starts moving immediately because it's basically just repeating a left click. I've played a bunch of games at this point and speedrun a bunch of games, and I will say that I think Monkey Island 2 is my favorite speedrun.
So I split early, but that was definitely a PB. I'll retime that. I will retime that. I will retime that. Oh my god.
When it was retimed, the Woofs had earned a world record by 8 seconds. And then,
It had kind of like always been there right in front of our faces, but we never put it together. So there was a glitch we knew about that didn't seem like actually useful.
At this point in the game, you're trying to get up the tree. You need to use a plank and an oar as steps. The oar breaks the first time you step on it, and you have to get it repaired on a completely different island.
Looks like a massive fracture. You're gonna be using this? I better reinforce it for you.
We've had, by accident, like managed to get Guybrush to stand on not a plank, just kind of floating in midair. So we called it floating Guybrush, and sometimes if you're going really fast, it just kind of happen on accident.
So I tried to investigate it, and I was able to climb the tree while never actually stepping on the oar.
Runners could use the floating Guybrush glitch to get up the tree, but that skips a cutscene that is supposed to set a solution for a later puzzle.
When you never break the oar, you never trigger the cutscene with the dancing skeletons, which never sets the solution to the bone puzzle in LeChuck's Fortress.
And if the bone puzzle doesn't have a solution, you just crash the game when you reach it.
But what we realized is that if you kind of floating Guybrush up and then put the oar in the last spot, break it, like stand on it, break it, trigger the cutscene.
You still get the animation, the weird animation that gives you the solution to the bone puzzle. But as soon as it ends, you end up on top of the tree, which is the best of both worlds, basically.
We got to skip fixing the oar. That's probably somewhere in the realm of 30 seconds, which is pretty big.
The day after this discovery, Frozen Spade would get a new world record of 32:19.
Holy crap. 32:19. Insane run. Holy crap.
World record activity would then pause for 8 months until October of 2021. And to understand what happened next, you have to understand FM towns.
I think most people would either know the FM towns as an option in Scum VM that they don't want to pick, or they've never heard of FM towns. It was Fujitsu. It was a Japanese computer that was Fujitsu trying to do a similar sort of thing to what the Amiga was trying to do. It was like a multimedia, all singing, all dancing alternative to IBM PCs.
Back in like 2018 or so, I think, I was curious because other speedrun games use like Japanese versions for text differences and to speed things up. And I was curious, like, I wonder if the Japanese version of Monkey Island 2 does the same thing. Maybe it's worth switching to that version.
Steve tried out the FM Towns version and found something rather amazing with a puzzle involving one of the map pieces.
You have to find 4 map pieces, and one of those map pieces blows away. You just try and pick it up, and it blows away and ends up on this branch on a cliff, and you have to use a fishing rod to fish up the map piece, but halfway when you're sort of reeling it in, a seagull comes along and steals it and takes it to a treehouse.
And I noticed, wait a minute.
In FM Towns, there's no cliff sequence. It goes straight from where you try and pick it up immediately to the treehouse.
And I was like, oh, okay, did I just imagine this? Did that just happen? And it was really weird.
And so this is exciting for the speedrun because if you don't have to do the cliff sequence, then you don't need the fishing rod. If you don't need the fishing rod, you don't have to impress the fisherman. If you don't have to impress the fisherman, you don't need the fish. You don't need the fish, you don't have to bust into the kitchen, you don't have to distract the chef. There's a whole sequence of events that you can completely skip out just because this one puzzle is missing.
I didn't really put much thought into it, but years later, I mentioned this, I think it was Spade, but it could have been someone else. I mentioned it to them, and they were questioning me like, are you sure, did this happen? Are you sure this happened? And I think I said at the time, I think that, it could have been a dream. I don't know, it could have been. Did I dream this? I started to second guess myself. Did I actually play this version?
But sure enough, it was true. The FM Towns version does skip the cliff puzzle. The map piece floats to the cliff, and then a seagull immediately flies it to the tree. However, there was a problem.
You couldn't run FM Towns games in QuanVM, was the problem. So we were like, okay, FM Towns is probably faster, but at the moment, like, playing in a not QuanVM version of ScumVM was just, you would lose too much time. It didn't make up the difference.
Urquan's ScumVM didn't support FM Towns, and Urquan himself had left the community in March of 2019. But in October of 2021, community member Firefight combed through Urquan's GitHub branch and went to work.
Firefight decided to take a look at everything that Quan had done, and that way he was able to recreate what Quan did, but now we have the code.
Runners were now able to take advantage of QuanVM's improved timing, while also being able to run Monkey Island 2 in FM Towns. But before we get to the speedrun implications, you might be curious. Why does the FM Towns version skip this puzzle?
My first thought was to look at the code to see why it skipped. Is there a possibility that there's other places we could find similar skips? Because this is huge. Fortunately and unfortunately, the reason why is immediately obvious, because there is a single line that gets added right to the start of the cutscene, which says, send it to the treehouse. Don't do anything else, just send it to the treehouse and we're done. Firstly, that's odd, because why would they even just add a line of code to skip out an entire section?
Even more bizarrely, the puzzle isn't skipped when you run the game in ScumVM.
The ScumVM team actually fixed it. They programmed into ScumVM code that gets around the fact that the FM Town skipped this puzzle to sort of reinsert the puzzle back in.
But you can bypass the fix if you skip the cutscene. So press escape, and now you don't have to do the puzzle again. This presented an interesting mystery.
Maybe this was an issue which only affected ScumVM and wasn't there on the original FM Towns, which would be a problem for it being, I guess, a legitimate strategy if it's just a ScumVM bug.
After a lot of digging, Casey got in touch with someone who could verify whether or not this was a ScumVM only bug.
His name's Karaziu. He has an original FM Towns and an original Monkey Island 2 for the FM Towns, and so he played through it and got me that wonderful footage, and he doesn't skip any cutscene, and it plays all the way through, and the map goes to the treehouse. It does skip out the cliff on the original FM Towns. So then I had a mystery on my hands. Why does it do that? I think a lot of people immediately think it's a space issue. Well, they've cut something, that's because they couldn't fit it onto everything onto the CD. All the original code is there. All the original sprites are there. All the original animation and everything that you would need for that sequence is there, but it just has one line of code saying ignore everything that comes later. I remember it was for a few weeks in various streams, there was a lot of speculation happening. People were saying like, oh, do they not like the angry chef? Is there like a cultural aversion to the whole cliff sequence, like it's dangerous or something? They don't want to show that in a children's game.
But instead of speculation, Casey reached out to people who developed the game.
And I tweeted at Dave Grossman and Tim Schafer. I tweeted at a couple of the devs. This tweet was completely ignored for about a month until a journalist called Jack discovered the tweet, and he was relentless in trying to solve this mystery. And there was a whole bunch of people involved with the original game trying to get together, and Jack was also talking to people behind the scenes.
Finally, Eric Wilmunder cracked the case.
Yeah, so the reason is just that the FM towns can't do vertical scrolling correctly.
Specifically, the FM towns could do vertical scrolling, but you could not have objects or animations on the screen at the same time.
That scene where it goes down the cliff and then you're slowly reading the map piece back up the cliff is the only vertical scroll where an item moves across the vertical scroll, and they couldn't make it work, and so they just put in a line to completely cut it out.
So, since you don't have to do the puzzle, how did that affect the speedrun?
And it saves minutes on the run. A game that didn't have a sequence break suddenly has two now, because there's that one, and then of course the floating Guybrush like up the tree thing is the other big one.
Runners did lose some of the speed-ups that the Amiga version provided, but the sequence break was more than enough to make up for it.
The skip was so huge, we were still saving, I think, probably a minute plus. I don't know.
Oh, and even though this is the Japanese version of the game, you can set the language to English. The switch to FM towns also meant the development of a strategy that doesn't really save much time, but I think it's emblematic of the lengths these runners will go to. If you recall, in the LeChuck sequence, runners grab the underwear, scroll up, put it in the bag, and then give the hanky to LeChuck all in one go. With the Amiga route, the bag and the hanky were on the same page of the inventory. But in FM towns, runners no longer get the fishing pole. This shifts the inventory, and the bag and the hanky are no longer on the same page. This makes an already tight sequence even more difficult. But here's how the runners fixed that.
In order to make it easier, way back in the speedrun, like at the beginning of chapter 2, so 10 minutes in, we pick up one item which is completely optional. It doesn't lose time to pick it up. It's an envelope. When you get thrown to jail in Fat Island, there are a couple of envelopes that you need to open. You can either pick them up and open them while you walk, or you can just open them and you don't get the envelope as an item in your inventory. The time difference is 0, like there's no time difference between doing one or the other. But if you pick exactly one envelope, every item in your inventory shifts by 1, and that makes this final strat with LeChuck way more, way easier.
If you have that manila envelope, that will move your inventory over just far enough to where the hanky is like on the same screen as the voodoo bag. And it's just something like really small in the beginning that like has major implications at the end.
Whew. 3207. There you go. Oh my gosh. It was stressing me out at the end there. New world record.
Let's go! The 31 has happened.
A few days later, Leo would get another world record, and a makeover, apparently. This would be the first world record to feature item sliding, a glitch that Leo had discovered.
If you read a book or something that takes away control from the game, like your mouse, your cursor disappears, while you're walking to get the map piece, you enter in this weird state that I call item sliding. It is a state where you aren't locked in when an animation happens. So if there's an animation or anything really, you can still use your items or stuff like that, which most of the time crashes the game. So you need to be careful. But this also means that, for instance, right after, you need to pick up the dog.
Okay, dog. You're coming with me.
And put it into your inventory, because in this game, you have an entire zoo in your inventory at some point. And while you do it, you can walk around, which ends up in a slide, basically. And you can do it while doing other things. You can also do it in the shop. The only problem is that this state doesn't last for long.
So the time save was minimal, but it does look cool.
Ooh. That's a really juicy gold. Well, it's a 1 second gold. Oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. I might have splitted a little bit early. Man, I need to check it out. I need to check if it is actually a sub 3130, but it is record.
I remember that the last record I got, I really did everything I could. I implemented everything, even item sliding, which can crash the game pretty easily. And the RNG was decent. Even though I think I got Coffin 4, but that's a common trend for records in Monkey 2. Like, you always get a terrible coffin. But yeah, I couldn't really do anything else.
And to top off all of the ScumVM shenanigans, ScumVM dev Bosca dropped into the Speedy Adventures Discord.
One of the ScumVM dev team members has come in to the Speedy Adventures community, and it's been taking lots of feedback and making little tweaks to a bunch of different games.
We were able to work with him to implement some more stuff. So the new releases of ScumVM have a lot of improvements when it comes to being able to run different versions of various games. And even when it comes to speedrunning, the changes that Quan made to make the emulator more consistent, now they are part of the actual build of ScumVM, which is pretty cool.
Sometime in the beginning of 2022, I decided I would like to make an attempt to get what I was calling the Triple Crown. So at the time is when I had already gotten world record in Monkey Island 1. Leo currently held the record in Monkey Island 2, had a very strong run in FM Towns with all the fixins, and then also still standing at the time was High Performance's crazy legendary 6 insult Curse of Monkey Island run. So both of these felt like pretty big hurdles, but I felt I was up to the challenge and wanted to give myself a challenge. So I think I had started on the grind for Monkey Island 2. I had PB'd a couple times, but I wasn't quite there. I wasn't quite able to beat Leo. And then what happened was I had submitted for our Speedy Adventures Marathon, I had submitted Curse of Monkey Island, and we did ended up doing a big old Monkey Island block. So I decided, okay, I'm going to focus my attention on Curse of Monkey Island now. I did end up beating High Performance, but it took a while. But then what had happened, LeoLitz was starting to run Monkey Island 1 again. So if I wanted to catch this window where I could get all 3 at the same time, I needed to jump back in Monkey Island 2 quickly, because Leo was getting very close. If I remember, I was hitting it pretty hard.
And we're in the green. Let's go. Gaming big.
I think I just got it. I was just in the zone that day. I hit the flow.
We got the thing. Head. Hip. Rib. Arm. Thank you, Bone Puzzle. Thank you.
For me, part of the Triple Crown grind, the impetus was to prove to myself that I still got it, that I can still be on top, I can still be the best. Old Frozen Spade can still hang with these young kids.
I think this is it. Yes! 31-22, new record. I'm the best.
And I did do it. And I still, think I got a lot of good speedrunning ahead of me. There's still time to improve there. Maybe even we're not super close to a new minute barrier, but you never know. Could happen. Barriers are meant to be broken, so we'll see what happens.
It's a crazy amount of time that he's managed to save. It's absolutely amazing. Fair play to him. He's a great player, and I don't begrudge him a single bit. I'm glad to see that game go even further and go as far as it can. May he long reign as top of the leaderboards if he can.
Spade's 31:22 was, at the time of my interviews, the current world record. But the thing about speedrunners, they don't stop.
We did get very, very quick Bonnie treat redemption. Shouts out to Archie. So why don't we get that started? We have one Bonnie right here, looking majestic. And I think it's time for a treat. You ready? We have a high five. Good. There we go. Oh, all of the munches. Fair amount of crunches. All of the good stuff here. Is today the day? I don't know. Okay, we got the donuts back up, folks. All right, folks. Is it coffin 1? No. Is it coffin 2, though? No. 3, 4. Back-to-back coffin 5s. Let's go. Pretty lousy last split. The rest of this wasn't too bad. We were just kind of affected by some bad RNG. Yes, coffin 2 we can work with, people. All right, just gotta stay focused. So we're in the green, heading into tunnels. Okay, second warp's fine. We can deal with that. Okay, great. That was a great warp. I'm really quick going to go like this, save, and then... That's okay, we'll take this. Whose LeChuck is this? What is going on here? Okay, this is not so good anymore. Dang. That was a run. That was a good run. Today, we had the bar Cherryade last time, which was absolutely terrible. This time we're gonna go with the bar Bubblegum.
Why did you start drinking obscure drinks on stream?
So I don't really know. Last year I did that Month of Monkey thing, and as like a thing I was like, oh, it's like a root beer themed thing. Like obviously root beer is such like part of the canon of the game. So I was like, I'll just do like each time I do a stream, I'll just drink a new root beer and I'll kind of just make like a review of it. And then that was just really popular. So I was like, okay. And I enjoy drinking soda and stuff. So I was like, I'll just try to find like weird ones in the area, and like every once in a while I'll pepper that in just to kind of take a break from the game, but also kind of keep it lively and stuff. Like when I have a swig of this, like when I do this right now, I think that I may have like ingested bleach or something. I don't want to be the guy who's like, look at me hurt myself as I drink these disgusting things, you know? But it's becoming that. My body, immediately, I can feel it in my chest is sort of being like, this is not something that a human should ingest, and you should like seek medical help. This could be the last run of the day. It's either the last run or the second to last run. I have been using that website that Leo put together. It's a coffin 1. Rib. Leg. Rib. Head. Okay, lousy bones, but at least we didn't get trolled. This is where it gets tight. Second's fine. Okay, PB, let's go.
This run was retimed to a 31:21.8 world record by 1 second. And that is where our story would have ended. But on April 8th, 2023, Mike the Viewer posted this in Discord. Clicking on and off the hotspot seemed to make Guybrush move slightly faster in some scenarios. They called this technique schmovement.
So anytime that that Guybrush is moving maybe away from the camera, there's kind of this illusion of a 3D kind of like depth of field, so they want to make Guybrush smaller, and to kind of stretch that even further, they kind of slow Guybrush down to make it look like, oh, he's walking into the distance. But by doing the movement technique and kind of clicking on and off certain spots, you maintain what we call big Guybrush speed.
I asked Mike for a more in-depth explanation of how this all works, and here's what he had to say.
Speedrunners have been spamming clicks to save frames while walking up the hill at the cemetery on Scab Island for years. I wanted to know what was going on there and tried to apply the trick in other locations. After some initial success at the entrance to the hotel in Woodtick, I got out the task tools and experimented until I figured out what was happening under the hood. Schmovement is a movement manipulation which allows you to walk faster while going up or left. You take advantage of the fact that, internally, Guybrush's walk is made up of big and small steps. Whenever you send him on a path that makes him walk in the up or left directions, his first step will be a big one. In the down and right directions, his first step is always small. If you keep clicking on spots, which send Guybrush on a new path while he is moving, you reset his movement cycle over and over and can force every step of the way to be a big one.
The community went to work on cataloging where they could use it, and it turns out you could use it in a lot of places.
We've seen seconds shaved off in multiple spots in the run at this point.
Now, the word schmovement, that's existed for a long time, though, right? So do you remember the origins of that and what that used to refer to?
I guess schmovement is a word that's used a lot in like fighting games. Like it's tech for, high-level fighting games. And then that has made its way into my chat, and I just have like, for whatever reason, latched onto that. So anytime things are going well, I would always say, we're schmoving now. We're schmoving. And then, now everybody's using schmovement, and then, of course, this tech comes in, so it's a very, very good fit, it seems like.
So, with schmovement in hand, or foot, the runners went to work. The world record was up for grabs.
I have to be honest, I'm a bit surprised that this is still alive. This, for whatever reason, didn't feel like a fast run to me. All right, show me the elevator, please. Okay, second warp is okay. I'll take it. Only the most important part of the game, right? Yeah, 31:16. I cannot believe that this PB'd. I'm going to be 100% honest. I really meant it when I was talking about that in tunnels. I did not think that would PB. I did not think that this was a fast run at all. Like, the time was there, we were teetering, but there was no, this run to me felt like they had no business like PBing in the slightest. Obviously got the sweet, sweet Vaporeon on the front. There it is. Sea salt, cheese flavor, sparkling water. As if that's like a normal combination of flavors that you'd have. Like, oh yeah, sea salt and cheese. It does have the official Pokemon logo in the bottom. The Pokemon Company does endorse whatever this is. What am I smelling? This is gonna sound weird, but it smells like cheese, okay? Let's have a sip. Okay. Ooh. Oh, it is, folks. I've taken a couple sips. I'm gonna continue to try to work through this thing. But I don't know if I like this at all. I think this is actually a bit of an abomination. I'm trying to think of, like, if you had just like a big ball of old old cheese. Like, it's not like good cheese. It's it's maybe not like moldy or something like that, but it's like cheese that's past its expiration. And then just kind of like an apple. Just kind of taking a bite of that. And then washing it down with some sort of like swill. Like, it's not even water, I think. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's like rainwater that's kind of been sitting outside for a bit. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. Just gotta wash this down my hunk of old cheese that I just did. And then I swished it around in my mouth. And then now that this is like my life now. I don't think that a bad wind will kill this thing by any stretch, but it would be nice if we got something decent. Dang, okay, bad wind. We had a good run of it today. I think our first 2 or 3 were like near perfect winds, and then we started getting these more lousy. Yep, so there's the time loss from the wind in particular. We're gonna be able to stay in the green. Does not look like it. It's a tough one. What do we have? Is it a 1 though? Alright, cool. Let's see what we can do down here then. Would appreciate something good, of course. Yeah, okay. Well, 1 for 1. Thank you. Okay, wow. Okay. Third's not the worst thing in the world. I will be the first to admit that. That's hanky in before going up. It all comes down to this. I would really like LeChuck to go up nice and quick here. Yeah. Gold LeChuck. That'll be fun to run against. Let's go. Another big PB there. That was almost a 6-second time save at the end. It's the power, folks, of the cheese soda.
Playlist has let me down today. I'm on the wrong pixel, but it's a 21, so fine. Look at that. And we should move. Whoo, baby. We were cooking there. All right, guys. PB Coffin's a 2. Is it? It's not a 1, it's a 2. I will absolutely take a 2. Hip, head. Hip, leg, head, arm. Hip, leg. Arm. Very good. Very good. Scared. Oh! Yes! Me! I win. I win the game. Me! That's how you freaking play a stupid game.
You had a tweet that was, I think it was last fall, but what you wrote in your tweet was, as a narrative designer, I love speedrunners and will do whatever I need to do to support them. So why is that?
Well, I mean, speedrunning is interesting, right? It's almost a separate art form, right? Because you're trying to get through something that is essentially a narrative game, right? So it's got this kind of pace and storytelling and structure to it. And speedrunners are interesting because they're just trying to break all of that, but not break it in a break way, but nicely break it. I have a lot of respect for that.
There was a person who was in the original when I was running Secret of Monkey Island. I think it was on my stream, and he came in. He was trying to get under people's skin and everything. He said, "This is not a real speed game," and we just laughed at that.
Hey folks, as always, I wanted to thank my patrons for their incredible support. If you want to see behind-the-scenes commentary on how this video and others were made, there's a link in the description to sign up for yourself. Also, I'm a member of the Adventure Game HOTSPOT Network, a collective of adventure game content creators. If you enjoyed this video, I'd like to recommend the in-depth interviews with adventure game industry veterans on Conversations with Curtis. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.